like 80s hair band music, or like what is the genre of that? I mean,
I
it's
have no
almost like
idea.
Public
genre
domain corporate
agnostic.
headbanging.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, something like that.
It kind of works for me. Anyway, welcome to Cut the Shit, Cue the Genius. Dahlia's not here with us today. She's on assignment with family. But I'm here with Liz King Caruso. And of course, everyone knows Nick Borelli because we needed someone whose brain we could pick clean on Discord communities. Because I had a really interesting experience. I've been in Discord communities to related to projects and or events,
Hmm.
but for the first time, I had a front row seat to people that are in Discord communities that have nothing to do with work. And the idea that they never meet in person, a lot of them never ever, and they carry on these relationships for a long, long time, and it's comfortable, and they're just like, in real life agnostic, to use that word again. And it just fascinates me, and it made me think, is this really the future of communities for like the next generation? Like, do we have to tie them to events? Do we have to tie them to businesses? And should we find the Discord communities that are out there and kind of tap into those for events? And I don't know what to do with this, but I wanted to ask you. So my first question is, can you explain to us what Discord is and what's the big deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's a communication app. It's very analogous to Slack, and I'll explain like some of the differences. But if you start there of saying like, yeah, there's channels and there's the ability to share private messages as well as team messages or group messages. You can create channels that are very niche. You can have extremely public channels, which is definitely something that makes Discord very special and different than a Slack, because you don't see a lot of public Slacks, if at all. And you can also lock them down and make them inclusive and then you can even have inclusive channels within a group. So lots of possibilities there, but like think of it like Slack. What makes it primarily different, I would say first and foremost, what makes it different is the early adopters and majority of the people who take place or live in Discord are people that are around gaming. So like
Mhm.
that's kind of like that kind of sets the tone, because that's the majority of the use cases for it. So it's very B2C, in what its aims are and like what its designs are. So if you look at like a Slack, you can tell immediately that it's B2B. It's oriented around teams that are already formalized. There's file sharing. I mean, there's CRM API, right? There's not that in Discord. I mean, Discord has a lot of connectivity, but not in the ways that move business needles forward. So it's not thought about like that. Like really, Slack, no matter, everyone uses the word community. I honestly think Slack is for teams and Discord is for communities, in a pure sense, right? Like everyone says they're everything, but in this instance, I think that's the kind of separator. Other than that, it's free to use. That's a big,
Mhm.
difference. The opportunity to pay and for them to make some more money is in their Nitro paid version. Even the name of it, suggests both gaming and B2C. Um, but in that, it's mostly cosmetic and aesthetic differences to your ability to show off your avatars and things like that, and some of the other ways that you can communicate. There is more space available in the Nitro
Mhm.
version as far as storage, but when you go back, I think, do you guys know the Slack? How far back you can go? There's a limit, right? Like I think in different
It used to
versions,
be
it's like
10,000 messages. I don't
I
know if
think
it's still.
10,000 messages. Yeah.
Mhm.
Discord does not have that at all. It goes back forever. So like I started off in nearly the same time in AOL chat and IRC. I persisted into, I don't know if anyone's person that knows what IRC is even at this point, but I lived
I
in
don't know. I might
IRC.
have been in it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
it's a
know
text
AOL
only
chat.
chat from like the 90s,
Mhm.
that was big for an era prior to social media, and it's very much built around the same premise of like people got married in IRC in the 90s. Like it
Mhm.
was it was like strong connections of people, that met there and lived in there. And in the discords I'm in right now, like literally when someone misses something, like the joke always is, you got to live in chat. Like if you missed it, like it's on you, because like the expectation is that this is the hub of your social life. So, um,
Mhm.
you have to kind of like, pay attention, or you'll miss something and you'll mix context, because in any kind of like niche circle, I mean, you speak eventually in nothing but, yeah, I don't know, inside jokes. And that's what it
Mhm.
ends up becoming, because the familiarity in a completely digital space becomes thus that, you speak a second language. You speak your Discord channel's language, and it makes it hard to get into at first sometimes. But like that's why I always tell people who are new to forums and communities to like be a fly on the wall for a while and like don't feel
Mhm.
the pressure, and then it's sort of all like the matrix starts to make sense, right? Like you start to see things. So, um that's how I've done it. But I've been in for like social reasons in these types of groups since I was a teenager, like without interruption. Like, and I've just jumped from platform to platform to platform. Social media kind of come in and out of, as far as like that. Like it's more of a tool for purpose as opposed to a hub and a home. But I've always had like home forums, like even in IRC, like it was high school and I was very much into music. So like I had like board ops, which means just like admin in a bunch of different bands, and there's like an international fan communities, and like because of that, you create like all other forums and groups, rules and protocols and naming conventions. All of the things that I was doing then, 30 years ago, have moved over into different platforms, and now I think probably the purest expression of that is Discord. So if you've ever been in one of those types of either forum groups that were popular in like the early 2000s, or for the association world, they were never popular and they tried to thrust them on everyone, uh, or you came from like something like you said, an AOL chat, or as far back as bulletin boards and text only browsers. I'm giving you the whole internet history today. Uh, Something like this has always existed. That's my point. Like from the beginning of the internet, there
Yeah.
was really bulletin boards for the commercial internet. Like when I first got online around 93, right around like when X-Files came out, like that was my purpose. I was like, go in, find information and communicate with people who were also as into X-Files and Star Trek: The Next Generation as I was. And find your tribe, right? I looked around at my, eighth graders and I'm like, all right, none of you care about super nerdy stuff that is probably aimed at 40-year-olds. I need to find something else than my recess. And then I found the internet, for better for worse. Um,
How do you
and
find Discord
yeah,
communities? I
finding.
mean, are you Googling them or what?
It's a great
Talk to
point.
your friends?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it ends up being like you'll see them. Influencers definitely peddle them, which is another
Oh,
part of the ecosystem that's super interesting. So, like an influencer needs a call to action, right? And like smash that like button gets kind of like sad after a while. So the opportunity to have private or like hosted or around a central figure in a specific community, again, primarily as the main use case is gaming, is pretty prevalent. So like a Discord server for specific streamers is often the case, and the streamer becomes kind of the lightning rod, and that creates a community, and the community is more than just talking about the streamer. Almost always, like that's just the sort of predication to ice break and get in the door, and then from that, there's like
mhm,
conversations that happen during streams or outside of it. Like now, I like one of the ones that I'm in for the last 5 years is a unique case, maybe, where there somebody told me about it in a park that I was at, which is a weird premise. So like I play Pokemon Go 24/7, and I have since day one of launch in July 6th, 2016, and it's very visible when people are playing it. So like I was playing it in a park once and they're like, oh, we have this Discord set up, you should join. And it was in this local group. It
mhm,
ballooned over the course of now almost 7 years into about 1,000 people, with maybe, let's say, call it 150 pretty active people. And we live in that. Like we know each other really well. It's all inside jokes. Like it's all shorthand. When someone does something, we know the next, like we know that this person's going to say this person's going to say this. It's like we've become bots. but like the most interesting, like, is this a community? Is this the future of communities? So
Mhm.
last week, a person who's a founding member unfortunately died, which was really terrible.
Mhm.
And it's all we talked about for like a week, about different. And this is a person that some of us, I would say 85% of people have never met in person. Stories and conversations and private, chats we've had and like that about a person, that we ostensibly know as a line of text. And we raised about $1,300 in like 2 days for their family. We
Mhm.
sent stuff to the funeral. This is an online group in a Discord, right? So, I mean, all of us for the last like 2 weeks, like are this is going down a super dark rabbit hole, or not dark, but like weird. Is that the in Pokemon, there's a buddy Pokemon that's like with you at all times. All of us changed it to like R.I.P. Jeremy for the last like 2 weeks. So like I go through my group and it's like hundreds of players, and it's like and it's spread. Like one person did it, another person saw it and moved it around, and like it just became this thing. So like it's a really it passes the tests for a true community as far as I'm concerned in like a lot of different ways.
Mhm.
um I don't know if Slacks do that, right? Like they seem practical. They seem, expedient, is kind of the goal. I don't feel like that's the practical element, is the emphasis in the Discord communities. It's more of the deepness of knowing people, and it really helps if you have some kind of organizing principle, right? Like, why are you here? Like, what are you talking about? And that honestly is the gateway. And then after that, it becomes social. We take pictures of our food and what we're eating and where we're at and recipes, and talk about our kids all the time. Like, we're a bunch of like 40-year-old people, like the main one I'm in, that play Pokemon, right? So like we all have kids, and it's weird. But we ask like, oh, there's like a traffic accident, and I'm not even in that state anymore. um so it becomes like your community. Now, how to find that? I mean, there's obviously, like I said, the organic way of like bumping into it, but like frequently the influencers and the streamers will have like Discords that they're members of there. Yes, you can Google it because these can be like hosted as
Mhm.
public. Other than that, really, you'll just end up like any place that you see people talking about a topic that you're into. It frequently comes up because you reference it because it's where you live, right? Like it's your hub. So it just organically comes up in conversations. But it really just depends on like what you're trying to go after. And the real challenge is, do you create your own or do you join one? Like that's an interesting, I mean,
Mhm.
conundrum. Like, have you proposed anything like this for the events industry?
Well, I wanna kinda get into that, but I'm thinking Texie Talk, Discord?
We have talked
Yeah.
about it. My husband is a big Discord user,
Mhm.
and I have to be honest, it's just like the language that they use. It's like a Discord server, and then
Yep.
there's like a whole app library, and it's like, oh, that's a whole thing. I don't want to set that whole thing up.
Yeah.
But also, the more I talk to people, and if I look at how he uses it, Nick, you mentioned you're not in any professional groups on Discord. It's
Nope.
almost like, I don't wanna ruin a bad thing. People really
Yeah,
like to
that's
connect with
fair.
other people, and it's almost nice to, like, have a space that I had mentioned to Michelle before this that, Starbucks has now rolled out a Discord for their new, like, NFT project, and I didn't join it. I'm thinking like, "Why? Why are we doing this?"
Yeah.
And I
Starbuck
know, like,
NFT Discord. What a
yeah.
dystopian place to be. Uh
But,
I'm
I
looking
think,
at some
like,
of the names of the channels, and you're right. Like, I look at them and I'm like, it depends. Like, if you really wanted to, I would make this is the only argument I would make like this. Being an event professional is unusual as a profession, in as much as it's also who you are. Like, there's not a lot of people in the events industry who are um, super casual about it. Like, it's a lifestyle, especially for people who are like actively attending events and participating in events. And like, I remember when I was like doing on-site work all the time and load-ins and load-outs, I couldn't have friends who were not in the events industry because they didn't understand that I'm not going to hang out with you on Saturday,
Yeah.
or that I actually have lots of time on Wednesday to, like, let's do something like even that. So like that part of it, like inter blending into your life. Like, I had a Facebook group that I did with a bunch of my friends a number of years ago. I'd love to resurrect, but I actually would be better in Discord, which was event prof parents. And it was all about like things that
Okay.
we take away from being parents that we apply to being, in events. That's an angle, right? So if you're not doing it for like, okay, like let's try to sell my,
Right.
whatever it is to people, and you're like, oh man, this is I don't need this after hours. Like, so I'm looking at this right now, and then like some of the I'm sort of the channels that I'm in associated with one group, like is on like pets, self-care, foodies. There is a self-promotion space, because if you don't make it, it'll just, sort of blur into everything else. And then like super niche groups based on like the game itself. But dad jokes is one of them. So like you can do that. I mean, one of the coolest things that I think that would be interesting for some groups is if you're looking for some kind of like extra value to add to some sort of membership that you have, then potentially there's with that kind of thing, it's always a debate, right? Do you go big and invite everybody in and make it inclusive, or do you go exclusive and make it an added value? And like there's a lot of
Yeah.
podcasts, as an example, that have
Mhm.
an added value. Patreon, $1 a month, and you get added to our Discord. You
There
frequently
you go,
hear that.
Liz. Because we have all the time in the world now to be chatting on Discord. At
Yeah.
least one of the Discord channels or the groups that I am on is from an event. It's like an
Hmm.
exclusive sort of like,
Yeah.
you get this too. But
I could
so
see that from a
I
topic at
wanna
an event, like where if
yeah.
it's some kind of like hyper niche topic, or, and then it's like, okay, there's a QR code at the end, scan that. And, everybody who came here today gets an extension of the value of attending this event. You
Yeah.
clearly define yourself as someone interested in this topic. It's possible.
So in the events industry, we are constantly wanting to borrow from B2C.
Hmm.
Remember the whole festivalization of trade shows, the
Yep.
gamification of trade shows.
How
It's
many
all borrowing.
Snapchat presentations I did in
Yeah, and so,
2017.
like, is this something that we should also borrow from? What can we learn?
Oh, there's a lot
Or
of things to learn.
like someone said, we need to recognize that some communities don't wanna be found, like, which is like
Yeah.
the anti-reason for having communities in, the B2B space. Like, you wanna be found, you want people to, like, see you and look at you and stuff like that. So, is there something here? That's one thing I was thinking about is, what can we borrow? Should we borrow? Or, um, if we want to have a life and we work in B2B in the events industry, should we just do Discord on the side? That's like our little guilty pleasure, and then we can talk like, candidly about stuff and people we can't stand, and how like our public faces, I am so passionate about events, and our private faces, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Just
Like
let me do my job.
24
And
hour a day work and think thing just
Stop
isn't
bothering.
working for me anymore. My kids don't even know me. So I don't know. It's a lot of stuff bundled into one thing. Liz, chime in.
yeah.
'Cause you're probably there. Like, I know you are. It's like, do I need one more thing to like suck my brain cells into?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I was telling Michelle when I saw Discord, I was kind of like, looks like Slack, PTSD, too many messages. I always tell people on LinkedIn, like, please don't message me on LinkedIn. It's like another place to check.
Oh,
But I do think, to your point,
I have
there's
a
kind
hard
of like
time.
a world of people that Discord feels most comfortable to them. There's a lot of conversations. I mean, I'm curious, like, from the parenting perspective, if I think about moms, of course, but like, would moms be hanging out on Discord?
They
Maybe.
should.
I don't really know.
Yeah.
It's like,
Your moms.
if that is where,
As
for certain groups, that's where they hang out. My husband's in all these like baseball card collecting groups and anime, whatever. I don't even really know what groups he's in, but I don't know.
there's
It's so
everything.
interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe Slack and B2B sort of communities is where Discord lovers go to die. It's like maybe
Yeah.
that's the next step. Like when you're so burned out on Discord, then you go to Slack for your job, and it's just like,
Yeah.
I know
I
he
don't
doesn't
know.
like
hours
Slack
of
admin.
is
sleep.
yeah,
Maybe
Slack.
we
I
need
mean,
like a
I'm
step by
in
step,
Slack.
like when you become an adult and you go to
It does not
Slack,
like
this
it.
is what you need to know. Like those
My
commercials.
9-year-old's into anime now, so I have to it's funny. I own 50,000 comic books, but like I'm not interested in manga or anime. It's very niche
Yeah.
difference. Like it's a very slight
Super
difference
niche.
when it's essentially the same thing, right? You're like it's just a different cultural filter, but that's kind of it. Like so I would say I don't think the event industry needs a B2B ROI driven Discord. I mean, that's just an opinion. I do think, however, there is a place for people to connect with people, and an excuse to break the ice because there's 8 billion people, um, as a kind of a galvanizing uniform thing that we can all count on. Like, for instance, in the Pokemon one, okay, we all play this game, Pokemon Go, but we talk about everything else. I would say that it's like 50% that, even though like that's what it's supposed to be about. And that's probably high because the game is just super addicting, but it doesn't have to be that. So for an event professionals, is there a place for Discord? I would say yes, but I would keep it to the social and the elements that are about your life as an event professional versus the work of being an event professional, because there's so many places for that already, frankly, that like every one of my friends has a place for that. Like, I'm very, very much like, I can't even advocate for them anymore because I'm like, I don't know, everyone I know has their own community, so I'm just like, they're all great, find yours. But they're not they're all very driven on like, how can we get sponsorship and how do we get eyeballs and how do we use it strategically. If you have a non-strategic life balancing place that you want to be able to say, we're all event professionals as our icebreaker, and then after that, let's go off and talk about maybe how being an event professional affects us as parents, or being an event professional perfects us, or I'm sorry, defines us a bit as a gamer, or as this or as that. Like, that's interesting, and I wouldn't put that on Slack, right? It would be like, and Slack would be like, oh my gosh, I don't need, just get me what I need to get this project done. All of the other stuff about like enriching your life and being fulfilled, I would say there's probably a place for that, and like Michelle, I think your ability to relate to someone in our world, but talking about something else that you're actually into, would be much easier if you had that kind of gateway acknowledgement of, where we all have this in common. So like for me, I think that like that's where it would be different, and I would say that there would be value for it. It just depends on who you're built, right? Like if you want to run away from constant communication after 5 p.m., I get it. Like that makes total sense. I'm like second or third screening at night. So like for me, I'll have 2 phones in my hand and I'm watching TV, so I'm probably worst case scenario, but like
you have a big brain. You can like handle all that stuff.
I have an active
You
brain
get to
that's
a certain
medicated.
point where like my theory is, in order to have good output, you got to erase some of the stuff coming in. Like there's only so much RAM in there. But anyway, Dahlia has a question for us.
Dahlia is joining us virtually here. She says, what kind of scenarios can an event marketer use Discord for, and how would they onboard their stakeholders? How would you see that used?
Didn't we just decide that we don't
well,
or just don't.
I'll take this. I'll take this. It could be done. It's subtle. So everyone,
is it morally right to do that though?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So here's the thing that we're all doing unconsciously that you could be doing consciously in an arena like that, and that is having a deep understanding of the people you're trying to communicate. So if you really wanted to see how they're built, because I've done a lot of persona building work, if you wanted to see what keeps people up at night, like for instance, I'm in a Discord group like this. Like, let's say there was an event professional one, and they're like, "What about Event Tech Live in Las Vegas?" And they'd say, "I'd love to go, but I don't want to be away from my kids any more than I have to." Right now, you could take that anecdote of a real human response that you wouldn't see in Slack. So Slack, somebody would say, the ROI is the blah blah blah, and my budget is, but they're just like, look, the real reason I'm not going is I don't want to be away from my kids any more than I have to be. Okay, so I'm a marketer, and I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I'm marketing this show. I'm Adam Perry in this instance, and I want to be able to have that person be part of my community and enjoy my event. Maybe there is some sort of, like, I've seen this done once in my life, and I like repeat it frequently, that there's a kids track in the event itself, that there's like this like cool educational experience for kids with like caregiving type people that are there that are also educators, that you can incorporate in your show and give parents the opportunity to want to attend your show, because like it's actually enriching for your family. And there's some like maybe some after event, whatever. You could go that big, but like if you really wanted to address of like the real pain points that human beings are having, you would spend time listening in places where they're more human than they are in a Slack and a LinkedIn group and stuff like that. That would
And
be
this
what
is
I
a
would do.
This is a departure.
Listen.
It's just a 1-minute anecdote, but I once went to an event where a woman brought one of those little flying squirrels. They have another name, those little tiny things that fly around in the cage. They look like little mice with wings. And it was a baby, and she brought it in a little pouch, and she was sitting in this section and in this session. And like every once in a while, she'd like feed it and stuff. And because it was in this vulnerable state, like that could be like a conversation. Like, I love going to events,
I
but
talked
I
to her.
didn't want to leave my flying squirrel at home. So I just brought him with. And, luckily the event organizer
Tell me
accommodated
more.
her. So why not?
That's cool.
Anyway, Joe Floyd has a really
Yeah, this
interesting.
is a very good question. So he says at some point, Discord will either begin charging or selling data. This happens to all the big platforms. Then what?
Yeah. And you've like bared your soul in Discord saying
Yeah.
stuff you would never say on Slack because you'd probably get your ass fired. And all of a sudden,
Potentially, depending on
I
the
think about with
community.
Chat GPT the same thing. It's like, you've said a lot of stuff, like what
Yeah,
you're
you can't be
thinking and
asking like how
what
to
you're
bury a
curious
body.
about. And like pretty soon it's going to be like a billboard. Michelle likes X, Y, and Z, or
Well,
not, or hates you and didn't tell you.
yeah, I wouldn't want everything necessarily said in these groups to go out to the world.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different persona depending on the space that they're in. I would say that to Joe's question, everything that Discord is from a technical standpoint. I mean, I don't know how to program, but I could probably do. Like, it's the most commoditized, easy to bake premise that is not changed in 30 years too much, other than some slight bells and whistles. I'm probably playing down some of the features they have or whatever, but like, as a user, who cares? Like, so if someone were to do that in such a delicate ecosystem, I would say that like their fear of migration to another easy to create platform would be absolutely paralyzing. Like, I wouldn't, if I was Discord, I would not mess with their recipe for that too much, because it's very easy to clone it. Like, Twitter's been in that situation forever, like where they're like, we could change this completely, but ultimately it's super easy to disrupt. A Mastodon or a Post or whatever comes in and essentially clones it. It would be really easy to clone a Discord. So if they made it in a way that was, and frankly, like, technology isn't even going in that direction. I understand that it has been, historically, but if you look at like the lack of third-party cookies and like so much conversations around decentralized everything, I think that it would be going against the grain to do that. But that said, there's lots of opportunities within Discord to lock down certain channels to have admin style of who can come in and who cannot. So in that instance, I think that it would make some of the fears that you have, Michelle, less likely. But if they start selling your data in an overt way, I think people would just migrate. And yeah, I think that like once you have that community, I've been a member of a community like this that's migrated to another platform. It's not that big of a deal. They're not in love with Discord. They're in love with their community, and Discord makes the community easier to build, but the community can take flight, and it's not hard. Like, there's no secret sauce program style, in my opinion, to Discord. It just is like what people are naturally inclined to do there that is their like special recipe. And I think that like streamers have been migrating from platform to platform for the last 5 or 6 years based on changes they've made. So like I think they're all scared of rocking the boat.
So what happens in a Discord community if someone like comes in there and is like, hey, I've got a new product and I'm going to sell it to you and I'm going to be as loud and obnoxious as I possibly can, and everyone just kind of turns around and goes, shut the F up.
Same thing that's happened. Yeah, it will happen. It does happen every so often.
Do you spam them? What do you do? What happens?
Yeah, it's the same way that you handle it in Facebook groups and all these other groups like that. Like, you have posted rules, you have admins, somebody sees that, you say, you go in with hopefully a polite way of saying like, hey, we're gonna remove this message, I'm gonna DM you and explain you why. They have a cut and paste thing that says like, here's this, you get one flag, and then that's how it goes. So you do have to create some kind of rules, and
Norms.
looking at other discords or other Facebook groups and stuff like that really give you the 4 or 5 things that you need to create those rules based on. Everyone pretty much has the same typical thing. It gets really complicated when there's like naming conventions and then like the inside joke stuff. That's why I say like don't sweat that. Like they're not rule breaking, but like even the naming conventions for some of the games I have, like our name isn't just our name. It's like a bunch of other fact files, like abbreviations for things. So like you have an understanding of like the context of who you're talking to, and like games are gamified, right? So like I'm like the highest level you can get in Pokemon Go. So like that means something only in that small context, and the rest of the world it doesn't mean anything at all. So like those kinds of signaling and things like that in the rules can be baked into how you name yourself. It just becomes like a language essentially that's unique to that room.
So Liz, what are you going to do with this information?
I am gonna
Right,
file
Craig
it away.
has been chiming in, so clearly he's interested. This could be like,
He's
maybe
been
the
texting me like,
10-year
you don't
wedding
know me at all.
anniversary happens in Discord.
I mean,
The next birth of your child happens live on Discord.
yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. I mean, I've been a big chatter and definitely obviously very active on just social and using, I mean, ever since similarly the days of AOL with chat rooms and instant messaging and ICQ. And, I also have kind of bounced around throughout the years. So I do see it as a place to make relationships. I haven't yet seen any of the communities I'm in on Discord. I don't know why. And so it's
Maybe
just
build it.
something to kind of like keep an eye on. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
build one. You guys know me. Or maybe I'll just keep watching till someone else does it and I'll jump over.
Someone, invites you, like this chat.
Yeah, someone build
I
it
think
and invite me.
I mean, the events industry has had a well-being problem forever, right? And it still hasn't been solved. And I think that like a place
Yeah, that's a whole
for
other.
community that is not about business, but is maybe about like the different aspects of well-being, not just like doing yoga and eating well, but like having a place to have people like listen to you and understand and relate to you. I think that there is a place for that. I just I'll stay to like your feeling of like, so what did we take away from this? My thought, hopefully from everybody here, the takeaway is that this is an organic community building place about people connecting as people, less so about let's get stuff done. Like this is not a let's get stuff done. This doesn't end. There's no end point. There's no project complete. This is a background place for people who get you, who speak your language. And there is a language of events. There is a language of that isn't about the actual work or making money, but there is something about like the passion behind it that it's like the only reason I would assume anyone is in events at all is for the passion of it. And that energy is different energy than other people have, right? Like your ability to completely, be in the same plane as a lawyer might be difficult, right? As an example, like that, you just be like, I don't understand. You just do the job for the job or whatever. Or you're trying to make the most amount of money. Like event planners aren't like that at all. Like they're very much of like, no, this is the passion for the work. So I think you could speak a language that has an undercurrent of passion and energy. Like I'm sure that the hobbies that people have in the events industry probably attack it more passionately than maybe someone else does. So
and what's really weird about Discord is that there is no compulsion to meet in real life. Like
no,
Discord people are just super happy to go on for the rest of their lives, just like having friends and being, like texting or text bots to each other. And Nick, I'm so impressed that you're actually participating in the chat while you're live on.
I always do that. Yeah.
What?
I don't know.
Going on here. Anyway, let's close this out. I think we've really hit on something. It gave me lots of ideas.
Lots of ideas. Maybe we'll have 3 new Discord communities for the event profs next week.
Yeah, but
we always come up with these ideas
We won't
and then
tell
it's like
any of our business
impossible.
friends. We'll just show up there.
Yeah,
Hello.
Well, thank you, Nick, so much for your
Sure.
time. Sorry that we have to wrap up, but as always, great conversation. We love picking your brain. Join us in next week. We are talking about how to do epic shit with your team, which is going to be a very exciting topic as always. And then we will continue to have more topics in March that we will share soon. Until then, check us out. We've been really posting these as LinkedIn events so that you can find them. You can RSVP, you can add them to your calendar just so that they're a little bit easier to find. So that's kind of the place to find us right now. So check us out there, and we will see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.